Hey y'all, my name is Abby May of Abby May Art, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I mix up my paint for Dutch pours. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to mix up paint like I do for my Dutch pours, you're going to need acrylic paint. I like to mix in Floetrol, and I'll talk about the sort of mixture that I use for parts to acrylic paint and Floetrol. A cup of water, a cup to mix your paints in, a food scale, and a stir stick. So when I mix up my paint, I do a ratio of 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part acrylic paint in grams. So when I'm using my food scale, it's always in grams. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I start with doing the amount of paint first, and then I'll add Floetrol in later. So when you're mixing up your paint, make sure you leave enough room in your cup because we're going to use water to get it even more thin for a Dutch pour. And what the Floetrol does is it kind of just smooths out the paint. I have seen artists do just a mixture of acrylic paint and water. I personally just don't really like it that way. I like using the Floetrol so it gets a little bit smoother. Okay, so I've got my scale zeroed out with the cup on it, and I'm going to go ahead and put some paint in it. Okay, so I did 60 grams of paint, so now I'm going to zero out my scale, and so I'm going to do 120 grams of Floetrol. That's where the 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part acrylic paint kind of comes into play. And before you pour your Floetrol in your cup, make sure to give it a good shake. Especially if it's been sitting for a while, it can get kind of like boogery. I didn't really want to say that, but it does get a little boogery if it's been sitting for a while. I also have it where I strain my Floetrol with a piece of pantyhose, rubber band on top, and that will also help keep kind of the boogery parts from getting in your paint. So here we go, 120 grams. Okay, so I've got my 60 grams of paint and my 120 grams of Floetrol. So now it's time to mix. Before I put any water in, I like to just go ahead and mix what I've got. It's just like mixing up cake mix or brownie mix or anything like that. Pancakes. Hopefully I'm not making you hungry. Make sure you give the sides a good scrape. Okay, so now it's all mixed up. You can see that it's pretty thick, but it's nice and runny, which is good. So that's where you know, the Floetrol really plays the part of making it kind of runnier, but it's still pretty thick. So we've got to thin it with some water. So when you start mixing your paint for the first time, I suggest doing just a little bit of water at a time, because if you add too much water and it gets too thin, then your consistency won't be right. The paint will just kind of like almost like fall apart because it's too thin to really hold together anymore. So yeah, I would start with just a little bit of water at first, and then mix, and then check the consistency, and if it still isn't right, add some more water. So since I have a bigger mixture here, I'm putting in a little bit more water than I would for when I do smaller batches. And the other thing is, if your paint does get too thin, there is no saving it. So it's always better to have it a little bit thicker than you intended than too thin. I've tried adding more paint or more Floetrol when I've made it too thin, and there's just no saving it, so. Don't forget to scrape the sides. Okay, so I'm going to check the consistency of this with the first amount of water that I've put in. And yeah, I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so what I like to do to check my consistency is I will take some paint on my stick and then drizzle it in the cup. And this is going to be hard to show you, but I'm going to try my best. So when you drizzle it in the cup, I do a couple of circles and then see how quickly the line that I just drizzled in the cup kind of dissipates into the rest of the paint. So I want it to dissipate pretty quickly. I'm going to try to tip more so you guys can see. So I hope you can see how it's just kind of sitting on there for a couple seconds before it dissipates. So for me, for a Dutch pour, that's too thick. So I'm going to add some more water and mix again. Another thing to note when you're mixing up paint, lighter colors like this yellow will thin more quickly with less amount of water than darker colors. And that's based on the pigmentation. So the darker pigment needs a little bit more water, and then the lighter ones and neon colors need less. Okay, so this is definitely thinner. So I'll show you what it looks like right now. And I'm going to double check it myself. So it definitely dissipates quicker, but not quick enough for me. So I'm going to add some more water. This is definitely a process when you're mixing up colors, so just, be patient with it. And I've mixed up a lot of paint and I still, take a while to mix. And that's okay. It's almost kind of therapeutic mixing up paint, just like the painting process itself. when I'm painting. For me, I usually have music in the background, just kind of jamming out. Okay, so this looks like the consistency that I'm looking for. So I'll show y'all here. So it is a lot more runny and it dissipates quickly. So finger crossed I got a shot where you could see that. I'm still working on getting a good camera setup. Yeah, so I am happy with this consistency. It's nice and thin. Another way to check your consistency is when you're drizzling it in the cup, instead of doing the circle, just letting it drizzle in one spot. And if it makes a pile when you're pouring it into your paint, then that means that it's too thick. But if it dissipates right into the paint right away, that's usually right about the thinness that you want. Okay, so that is how I mix up my paint for Dutch pours. Let me know if you have any questions or what you thought about this. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up and please consider subscribing. Thank you so much, and I hope this really helps with your paint journey as it's helped with mine.